Yaakov Chaperein, Aksivach Simach Treva, good gebencht Jahr, a great year, the best year ever. Amen.
Amen. Gam bechem.
All right, let's go, Chevra. Here we go. Here we go. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Mem Hey. We are going to be analyzing the last clause in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Dalid Amid Beis that says that Kol Hayotzin Lahatzel, whoever goes out of the Tchum B'Reshus, because they're going to save, like a woman is giving birth, or God forbid there's a war, someone is in danger. So the Mishnah concludes with the words that they are allowed to return to their place. And really this appears to contradict what we learned in the clause prior to it. And we quoted the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, that even though that initially, when you left, even B'Reshus, you were only given Daled Amas. But then the Rabban Gamliel says that no, you have a new tchum, that you went to the Sanhedrin Hagadol, you have 2,000 Amas. Well, 2,000 Amas doesn't necessarily mean that you can return to your place. It's mamash stira. We're going to have two approaches in interpreting the Mishnah. We're going to be learning various rules regarding warfare on Shabbos. If people come to attack a border city, even if they're coming to attack it for financial reasons, we are allowed to go out and be Machal Shabbos, because if a border city will be conquered and they might decide to conquer it, then this will facilitate their conquest of the entire land. We're going to learn a very important dispensation kula, that if someone is traveling, this was really implied in the first Mishnah in the Perek, and they see an area that's already within 2,000 amas from where they are, but it's getting dark. They won't be able to physically get there. As long as they declare, and they have to declare, that that will be my location to take in Shabbos, even though they're not being ma'arav beraglov, because they're not their mamish, they're not sending food to make the normal aid of tchumen, but as long as they are within 2,000 amas and they make such a declaration, then that place that they declared becomes their ground zero. It is from there that they count to 2,000 amas. Question we're going to have in the Mishnah will be, Mishnah Daf Mem Hey, if no such declaration was made, but it's reasonable to assume that had they known that they are already within the 2,000 amas of where they wanted to be, they would have made such a declaration. They didn't make that declaration because they didn't even know that. It's getting dark. They didn't know that they're that near the city. Question will be whether the city becomes their ground zero or no. They made no such declaration. They had no such knowledge. Their physical location becomes their ground zero. We're going to have a machlokes in the Mishnah that we already mentioned a few daf ago. If a person, while Shabbos came in, and if I am in my location, where here is my required or acquired residence, I don't have to declare anything. The declaration we just mentioned was if I'm making my residence not where I'm physically at. But if it's where I am, then this is my headquarters. Question is, do I have to be awake and aware, at least an intent, b'kavana, that this is my current makom hashvisa? What happens if a person slept Friday afternoon into Shabbos? So what's going to be the din over there? And as we have a machlokes in the Mishnah regarding the sleeping, let's say the sleeping traveler, this is going to extend over what happens if there's an object that has no owners. It's hefker. So do we say that a hefker object also acquires its residence from where it physically was when Shabbos came in, or no? Since it did not belong to anyone, so it will only be allowed to be carried daled amas. We're going to really, on Daf Mem Hey Amid Beis, connect our sugya to a very important machlokes that we have in Tainus, Daf Tes Amid Beis, between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua as to where does rain originate from. Rabbi Eliezer quotes the pasuk in Bereshis in the beginning, Ve'ed Yalam in Haaretz. All of the waters of the rain come from the seas. Rabbi Yeshua quotes a pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu says that limitar hashamayim tishtamayim, which means that the rain comes from somewhere out there in space. We'll see how that's negeya, benegea tchumen. How can you move rain? How can you move water that came down through rain on Shabbos, and the Gemara is going to ultimately conclude that objects that are in motion when Shabbos comes in, Bechlal don't acquire a residence, and that's a good thing. So then when they enter, when they finally settle themselves, now you count 2,000 amas in each direction. Wow, a lot more than that as well will be learned on Daf Mem Hey. We left off on Daf Mem Hey, Amid Aleph, 9 lines from the top of the Amid by the 2 dots. So in the Mishnah, all right, the Mishnah taught us the din that if you left B'Reshus, and we explained different examples to save life, you acquire 2,000 amas to each direction once you achieved your goal. We learned that even if you did not end up doing what you set out to do, since you left to save a life, you were told that there's no more need. When you hear that news, it is from your current location. You have again 2,000 amas, and we don't say, "Ooh, you left your original Tchum Shabbos. You only have Dalad amas." We don't say that. But then the final clause of the Mishnah is, and let's read it inside the Gemara, that the Chola Yotzim Lahatzil. Again, if you went out with the intent of saving a life, then Choizren L'Makayman, you can return to your place. This is Mamash Astira, right? You being given a new Tchum is a lot better than you being stuck to Dalad amas, Gavaldik. And indeed, this was the great heter of Rabban Gamliel. However, to go back to your place, what happens if someone traveled 10,000 amas? But then they can go back 10,000 amas? Didn't we just say that you only have a new Tchum Shabbos, which only allows you to go 2,000 amas in any direction? So on this, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, the first way to explain the final clause in the Mishnah is that indeed the Mishnah does not mean that you can walk beyond your 2,000 amas from your current new Tchum. You may not. The Mishnah is speaking about another issue, that if it's on Shabbos in which aside of the issue of Tchum, which is an Isur D'Rabbanan, you have an issue of Hoitza'ah, which is an Isur D'Orais, you can't carry. If you went out to a place in which to save the life, you needed to take a weapon. So now there's a carrying issue. You're not allowed to carry a weapon. So on this, the Mishnah is saying, you can turn if your original place is within 2,000 amas. Of course, you can't go beyond that. You are allowed to carry a weapon. And again, you're allowed to carry a weapon, as we just mentioned the words yesterday. There's a concept called hitiru seifan mishum tchilasan. If you will not be allowed to carry your weapon back, then next time around, when you will hear that someone is in danger, and you're going to say to yourself, well, I don't know for sure if they are in danger, and I'm going to go there. Do I need a weapon? I don't know if I need a weapon. It's not worth it to take the weapon, because even though I can take it, I won't be able to carry it back. So because of that, the next time around, you might not go out with your weapon. And maybe you will need it. And maybe that not taking it will be the cause of someone to lose a life. So therefore, they allowed you to be Mechalel Shabbos on the way back. Guys, this is the sugya from where we paskin. We're going to get all the questions now by Hatzalah members that they not only go out to save a life, which they do, but they also return. So this is the source of the concept. I don't understand the question to begin with. What forced Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav to limit the final clause in the Mishnah? To limit it, to say, you can't go beyond 2,000 amas, you can only carry the weapons back within that new tchum. What's Bechal the Kasha? Dilma lahatzal shani. Like Rashi says, it's more or less on the same height. It's around 21, 22 lines from the top of the Amid. Maybe the first clause in the Mishnah is speaking about someone who's not going to save a life. B'Reshus means either be'edus ha'chodesh, that's not about saving a life, or saving a life for which you don't need a weapon. A chachama, a midwife. But maybe if someone is going to save someone from an enemy, Rashi says, explaining the Gemara, and therefore there's a possibility that whoever you went chasing might now chase you. So therefore you can go back all the way to where you came from, way beyond 2,000 amas. So the Gemara says, indeed, from our Mishnah, we would have been able to give that answer and not limit the third clause. There was another kasha, there was another Mishnah, and there that stira can only be resolved by interpreting what Rabbi Yehuda Amarav said, both for there and for here as well. His answer stands, but what forced him to come to that was another problem, was another stira. It says now in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chav Gimel, when people came to testify that they saw the new moon. Well, even though they left, so to say, with permission, but as we learned in the beginning of our Perik Mishnah, that even if Goyim took you out against your will, if they did not return you, you only have daladamas. After you testified, you only have daladamas. So just to make something clear, you testified in the temple compound, in the Beis Hamikdash compound. That was a enclosed area. Rabbi Gamliel in the Mishnah says that daladamas means daladamas if you're out there in the bika, in a sada, not if you are in an enclosed area. And a chanami, they were able to walk in the temple compound. But guys, in the times of Rabbi Gamliel, speaking about the base that Yerushalayim was not fully, Rav Gamliel Hazakin, the Yerushalayim was not fully encircled. So they were not allowed to walk in the city of Yerushalayim, which was very difficult for them. And because of that, we mentioned this when we began the Perek, that they have 2,000 amas, they get a new tchum, which is Amachaya. And a new tchum means even though the city is not encircled, it doesn't matter. As long as you are in the city, the whole city is like dalad amas. And then beyond the city, you can go 2,000 amas in each direction, like every Yerushalmi. First white line. And look at the words of the Mishnah. Here is the problem. Here's the stira. If someone hears that an army is attacking a neighboring community, and they're going out there to save them, here they're going with weapons. Or someone who's being threatened by a flood, or there was a building fell down, there was an earthquake, or from a fire. How many things are happening now in LA at the same time? Here also, they said that the one who went out will acquire a new tchum, but there's a limit. But not more than that. And one of the examples the Mishnah gives is if you're going out to save a yid from a gaius, from an army, from an enemy army. Clearly, you're going out with a weapon. And the problem is, in that case, you don't have more than 2,000 amas. What about our Mishnah, the final clause? And that's mashma that afilu tuva. So for this problem, indeed, again, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav gives his approach. The Mishnah does not mean you have more than 2,000 amas. You do not. The third clause of the Mishnah is adding another leniency, a much bigger leniency. That not only do you get your new tchum, don't forget tchumin is midrabanan, but you are allowed, within that tchum, you are allowed to carry a weapon. Because again, this is a heter needed for pikuach nefesh for the next time. Okay, kedetanya. I'm according to Sefta, but we're bringing another case that's not referring to mamish, our issue of tchumen, but it's a similar case. When people would carry weapons out, and they would carry outside the city, whenever we are given a heter to be mechalal Shabbos to save lives, we can't use it as a carte blanche to say, well, once I can be mechalal, I can be mechalal. God forbid. Only where it's needed. And if you can take down the chilul Shabbos from a deraisa to a derabanan, you have to do so. They went out with weapons. We're speaking about them going outside the city. And when they returned, they didn't want to carry the weapons in their city. Guys, not every city has an eruv. Weapons to begin with are also their weapons, the muktzah. If they're muktzah, if they're not considered an ornament, you have that in Shabbos. So what they did was, when we go back into the city, the first Reshus HaYachid, the first house within the walls of the city, is going to be the place where everyone will deposit their weapon. They're not going to bring it back to their homes. They're minimizing the chilul, whether the issue is a doiraisa, whether the issue is muktzah, whatever the issue is. The moment you enter the city, put it in the first home. There was one time that a terrible thing happened. The enemies realized from where these warriors came from, and they ran after the Jewish warriors back into that village, into that city. And the moment the Yidden became aware that they are being pursued, they needed to get their weapons again. Problem is the weapons were all in one little location. Normally everyone had their weapon in their own home. So there was a stampede. The Yidden went into that one home to get their weapons. And the enemies were right there. And they became in very close proximity. And what happened was that there was what we call friendly fire, which is a horrible feeling. And the Yidden died by their fellow Yid more than they died from their enemy. We have this sometimes that because of, remember the Sandal HaMasumar? Sometimes one story happened and Chazal made a takana forever. And that even means after Machal Shabbos Midoy Raisa, by carrying Dalal Damas and Rishus Arabim. But again, the third clause in the Mishnah never allows you to go more than 2,000 Amma. Now, guys, obviously, if you're going back from a war and the enemies are behind you, and if you're going to stay within your tchum, your life is in danger, that's pikuach nefesh. We're not speaking about that. But again, we are limiting the third clause. That's approach number one. However, Nachman Yitzchak says, absolutely not. It's not a contradiction, not the Mishnah within the Mishnah, not a contradiction from Rosh Hashanah, Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis to our Mishnah. Like Kasha Khan, here in Rosh Hashanah, where it says clearly that even when you go out to engage battle, you may not go back more than 2,000. You get a Nutchum, but you don't have more than 2,000 Amas. That's only Shenitzcha Yisrael Asumas Olam. That's when we won the war. So there were no more enemies. There's no possibility that they're going to come and counterattack. Our Mishnah, including the third clause, is dafka speaking about where there's just a slight possibility they're going to chase you. That they won over themselves. That's a lashon saginor. It's a euphemism. It means they won the battle. You're running back. You're fleeing. Of course, go back to your place. Now, if it's such an of course, it's a pshita. It's not such an of course. It's a scenario where no one knows that you're running. Theoretically, you can still stay within 2,000 amas. The Mishnah says, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't wait until you hear them pursuing you. Go back to your place with your weapons. Now that we speak about war, this is the sugya that the Rebbe always quotes when it comes to the Rebbe's strong opinion that we may never, ever cede territory in the Holy Land towards our enemies, even in the context of a peace process. Why? Because the Rebbe's opinion was not only for halacha reasons, but for safety reasons. Of course, that's a halacha reason. But whenever you give up territory to your enemies, especially if that territory is on your border, that means you make your borders smaller, you are endangering the lives of every Jew that lives within the smaller border. It's a pikuach nefesh issue. That's the sugya here. If Goyim are besieging a Jewish town, but not a border town, a bunch of Goyim are coming in Europe, and all they say they want is they want some money. So said, and therefore, if they're coming for finances, it's not pikuach nefesh. Not pikuach nefesh. So therefore, ein yoytzin alei mechli zaynon. The ein mechal alei mas Shabbos. You can't go out with weapons. You can be mechal Shabbos. Tanya nami achi. Nachem shurtzonu v'chuli. But here in this brayso, there's a very important nuance. It's only if they're saying that they're coming for property, they're coming for money. But if they're coming and the reason why they're here is life related, then yoytzen alem mechli zaynon, then you go out with weapons and mechal Shabbos. However, but if we the Jews, we're living in a city that's near the border. Here, even if they're not coming for life, they're coming for money. And they're not coming for property. They're coming for not a shkeit money, relative. They're coming at least keitav and bekash. They need straw for their animals. They need stubble. All they want is straw. Imagine. You go out with weapons and you machal Shabbos. Like Rashi says, because if they'll realize that it is a place that it is easy to conquer, they might change their minds. They might. And if they conquer it and you lose it, then they'll be even closer to the rest of the community. And reading it inside the words of Rashi, that's a border city. When you conquer a city inside a country, it's a terrible thing. but it doesn't make it, so to say, easier. It's always a little bit easier, but it doesn't make it easier for them to conquer the land. Once you give up a piece of your border, that means that the Yiddish borders becomes narrower. That's the end of the world. And you always wage war on it. This has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. This is anywhere in the world. All right. Omar Rav Yosef Amanyume. Omar Rav Nachman. Oh, Bavel. Babylonia. Now, which part of Babel he didn't say. So if Goyim come, we are obligated to go out with weapons on Shabbos because Pikuach Nefesh. The Targuma, now it wasn't clear what location in Babel was he referring to, so they explained that he was referring to the city of Nahardal. City of Nahardal, so to say, was the gateway to the Jewish settlement in Babel. What's the meaning in the Pasuk? Pasuk in Shmuel, Vayagid Lu David, Lamer they told David, Hine Pelishtim, Nilchamim B'Ke'ilah, the Pelishtim are here, and they came to wage battle in the city of Ke'ilah. And we wanted to clarify that battle. They were not here then, God forbid, to kill the Jews, but they are pillaging the threshing floors. In other words, they came there to steal money. They came there to raid, not for life. And what did David HaMelech do? That Ke'ilah, where is Ke'ilah? That's why it says in the pasuk, the behema shoysim es haguranos. Listen, when they're coming for life, they also pillage. But the Tanach wouldn't quote it. The pasuk is writing that to emphasize that they only came for money. And what happened? The Chsiv, it says, "Vayishal David b'Hashem leimer." David HaMelech asked Hashem. This is asking the Urim v'Tumim. Ha'elech v'hi kesi ba'Pelishtim ha'elech. Should I go and fight these Pelishtim? And God tells David, "Leich, go v'hi kisa b'Pelishtim." And that's the whole purpose of asking the Urim v'Tumim to find out the future. You will save the city. Now, by the way, this happened on Shabbos. The Gemara clarifies, what do you think David HaMelech was asking the Urim v'Tumim? Whether he was asking whether Ishari Yasir, and the question is because since they only came al Iskei Tevan V'Kash, David HaMelech was not certain whether he can be Machal Shabbos. If that would have been his question, guys, this is the rule. You don't ask a Navi, you don't ask the Urim v'Tumim a halachic question, and especially why you need especially, it's not clear. But over here, there was a Beis Din of Shmuel Haramasi. It's almost mashma that if there would not have been a Beis Din, maybe. That's a question mark on that. But you have to go ask a Beis Din. It wasn't that David HaMelech already had this klal that if Goyim are coming to a Ir Asmucha L'Sfar, even al Iskei Tevan V'Kash, you have to be Machal Shabbos. They might change their minds later and decide to wage war. Ella, the reason why he asked the Urim v'Tumim was because Machlal, when we went to engage in battle, when we had access to a Navi, we would always consult because we didn't want to go wage a war and lose. That's a double negative. Ella imatzlach ile matzlach, as was the question for the Urim v'Tumim, and it's interesting that they asked that question on Shabbos. On Shabbos, well, you can say it's a Pikuach Nefesh question involved. I'm saying that because the Urim v'Tumim, there was a certain amount of writing, but maybe there was no writing, there was no real writing, right? The letters you would shine up. Well, Havdil, maybe it's connected to technology use. Anyways, he asked whether he'll be Matzliach or not. No, it's the fact that he was told, that the Nach records that he was told that he will save them because that was the Ikid, if not the Ikar Chasam and HaSefer. He asked whether he'll be Matzliach, and indeed, Shema Mina, that it was not about Isir Beheter. As far as Isir Beheter is concerned, of course you are allowed to. Of course you are. Now, if you have access to a Navi and you are told that you're going to fail, that's something else. Of course, it's terrible that they take Tevan V'Kash. But if you know you're going to lose fighting against them, then you're not doing any service going to battle them, because then more Yidden will get killed. Okay. Mishnah. Now, the implied rule, the premise of this rule was already implied on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis, like we mentioned in the introduction, that when Rabbi Gamliel says that I saw through my telescope that we were already within the port in 1 second. So what? So what? If you took in Shabbos 1999 Amos outside the port, Should not that be the place where you're kind of your shvisa? And if that's your makam shvisa, then when you enter the city, are you not bound to the 2,000 amos from where you physically were? The answer is that if you are traveling and you are already within 2,000 amos from your desired destination, if you declare that my makam shvisa is the destination, even though you were not ma'arav baraglov, this is important, even though you put no food there, since you are within that proximity and you made that declaration, your destination becomes your ground zero. Question now will be, if you did not know that you are within 2,000 amos from your destination, you made no declaration from your lack of knowledge. Had you known, you would have wanted to make your destined city your ground zero to count from there to 2,000 amos. What do we say in this case? Misha Yasha Baderech. And you didn't realize that you are already within the Tchum. It's Erev Shabbos. And you sat there until it got dark. And then when you stand up, you see, Rashi says, right? Already betchum ha'ir. And says the Mishnah, nevertheless, since you did not declare, because you didn't know that your tchum will be the city, therefore your tchum is from where you physically were. So lo yikanes. Now lo yikanes doesn't mean you can't enter. Yeah, you can enter. Your location is the ground zero. You can walk 2,000 amos to any direction. The city was within 2,000 amos. You can enter the city, but you're bound to your tchum of your location where you took Shabbos in. So if 2,000 amos only takes you into, I don't know, a couple of feet into the city, or a kilometer into the city, but not more, you may not walk more. That was the whole question we had above, whether you can throw something, but you can't. These are the words of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda is lenient and he says yikonis. Yikonis means not only you can enter, of course you can enter, that you receive the tchum like the b'nei ha'ir. You can fully use the city and not walk to the other side another 2,000 amos. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, without prior intent, and Rabbi Yehuda understood that what happened in that story was that Rav Tarfon did acquire the Makayim HaShvisa Kibnei Ha'ir, and not where he physically was outside the city within 2,000 amos, even though he didn't even know that he was near the city. Mistama, there are more stories about Rav Tarfon in the Mishnah, maybe more than any other Tanach. Okay, says the Gemara, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, he was going before Shabbos, and it got dark. And he didn't realize that he's already within 2,000 amos. So he rested. And below, he davened, he so the Shabbos, Midrash said whatever, and he went to sleep. And he wakes up in the morning. The Shachras, Bakar, who wakes him up? Shepherds, obviously, Goyim. And Amrullah, Rebbe, no, I take that back. Why were shepherds out there? Kasha. You are already within 2,000 amos. You can go there. He went in. Now, Rabbi Yehuda understood that he went in not only to the place in the city that was within 2,000 amos from where he stopped, but once he entered the city, like Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, the city became his ground zero, which allowed him to walk a lot deeper into the city, all the way to the base Medrash, the Yoshav Beis HaMedrash, and the Dara Shkolayim Kule. As a Yid, he spent the whole Shabbos davening and fabringen and learning in the shul. So right away, whether it is Amrullah or whether Amalei Rabakiva, Misham Raya, how do you know what happened over there? Even just based on the words that you quoted, maybe Shema Beliba is. Maybe he knew that he is already within 2,000 amos. And everyone subscribes to this traveling Eruv, that if you are already within 2,000 amos from your destination, if you intend, even though you're not there, not beraglov, not with food, but you say, my headquarters is the city, then that becomes your headquarters. Or another, maybe he didn't know, but the Beis HaMedrash was 2,000 amos from where he physically was Erev Shabbos. Like we mentioned in Rabbi Meir, you get to walk 2,000 amos. If 2,000 amos takes you into the city, you can walk into the city as long as you are within your original 2,000 amos. So that Maisa we don't know enough from that story to substantiate it. Rabbi Yehuda, obviously, Rabbi Yehuda felt that story does substantiate his shita. All right, now, when I'm out of Biraglov, when I am in a physical location, I don't have to make any declarations. This is my acquired residence for Shabbos. Question is, do you have to be awake? Which means, do you have to be aware of the fact? Do you need to have da'as? You want to use the word kavana. What happens if you slept when Shabbos came in? When you slept on the road, and because you were not awake when Shabbos came in, so you didn't have in mind to acquire this tchum, nevertheless, you don't need such kavanah. You were there physically, says the Tanakama, which is Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, however, no, nisht. Wow, since you're out there in the field, that's the ganze tchum that you have. Now, let's go into a nuance of how do we measure daladamas. Rabbi Eliezer says, we just quoted this in the top of yesterday's daf, on top of this daf, I'm sorry, that Fahu Be'emtza on daladamas means that you get to walk a total of daladamas. Everyone subscribes to that. If I said otherwise yesterday, I correct that. But you are automatically in the middle. You get to walk 2 amas to your right, 2 amas to your left, 2 amas to your front, 2 amas to your back. That's it. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You only get 4 amas. You don't get 4 amas to the right and another 4 amas to the left. But you get to choose to which direction you want to go. So if you choose, I want to use my whole 4 amas to my right, because I'm now at the periphery, you get to do that. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, le'ezer ruach she'yirtzel yelech. Umoide Rabbi Yehuda, that once you made such a clarification, she'im biraroi, either verbally or by walking there, then you can't change it. You can't keep on changing it. She'eina yochal lachzer boi. And now we're going to have a couple of interesting cases. There were 2 people, baderech, we're going according not to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. They were sleeping when Shabbos came in. They were near each other. They were not together, they were near each other. Each one, according to the Chachamim, are only given 4 amas. And whether it is like Rabbi Yehuda that they were mevader, whether it is like Rabbi Eliezer that by default each one already has 2 amas to each side, and the mixas amoisav sholzeh was betoich amoisav sholzeh. So there is a little bit of an overlap. Says the Mishnah, Mevian Oichlim Be'emsa, they are allowed to bring food to their area of overlap. There's a chiddush here, guys. Because remember we said that my belongings are bound to my tchum. So if my tchum is on these daladamas, right, my stuff can only go to where I can go and not beyond it. If your tchum is not my tchum, even though there's overlap, if you will share food with me, maybe I will inadvertently take your food with me in my daladamas, some of which is beyond your tchum. We're not afraid of that. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. We could share the food. Daf memhem and beis. They should be mindful. Similarly, says the Mishnah, if there were 3 people, all right, again, each one, we're not going like Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. They were traveling. They slept when Shabbos came in. So there was no kavanah to acquire a residence. So they're given 4 amas. Let's say, Chevre, that these people are physically 2 amas apart of each other. 2 amas apart of each other. Let's go with Rabbi Eliezer, which is going to mean that, let's go ABC. A is the right, B is the center, C is the left. ABC. The B's 4 amas overlap both. But none of the amas of A overlap any of the amas of C. Says the Mishnah, so as we said before, we're not afraid that once he has food belonging to another, he might take the food into his daladamas, which is beyond the others. We're not afraid of that. So who, the middle guy, B, mutri, he can share food with A and C. Beheim, C can share food with B, and A can share food with B. And And again, we're not afraid that the food of A will end up in the daladamas of C. We're not afraid of that. Okay. However, are asurim zeh and zeh, because there is no overlap in the case that we just painted between A and C. Amar Rabbi Shimon, I'll give you another example. If you have three chatzeiros, each chatzin made with their own residence and of chatzeiros. Each of these three chatzeiros, which are adjacent, congruent, shchenim, one with the other, they all have an independent exit to the Rosh Hashanah. Each one has a door to the Rosh Hashanah. They are also open one to the other. Same thing, A, B, and C. Okay? Now, do they have to make an Eruv Chatzeiros one with the other? No, they don't, because since each one has their own exit to the Rosh Hashanah, then if Chatzir A makes an Eruv amongst themselves, they can carry in their Chatzir. The fact that they're neighboring Chatzir, even if there's an opening towards it, as long as it's not a breach, just a Pesach, if they did not join the Eruv, so what? Right? The Chevra of B don't need A to go to the Rosh Hashanah. As long as each one has an independent passage to the Rosh Hashanah, they don't have to be ma'arav all with each other. Now they could. So what happens if Irvu Shtayim Imam Tzoy, same concept. Here it's not automatic Kohen Makom Shvisa, but Chatzir A and the members of Chatzir B join together, A and B join together. Chatzir C and Chatzir A, Chatzir C and Chatzir B also joined another Eruv together. But there was no Eruv between A and C. Same concept. Can you carry? How can you carry? So he, the middle one, Mutari Simon, B joined C, they can carry back and forth.
Rabbi.
Yes.
It seems like this case is a little different because if they made those independent Eruvin with Chatzar B, then now they could all join together because they could all hang out in B.
No, they can't. No, they can't. Because no one from A has any joint ownership in C.
Okay, but I'm in A. I could bring my stuff to B, and C could bring their stuff to B, and now we're all in B.
Doesn't matter. That's fine. But whatever originated from A can never end up in C.
Oh, okay. Can't go to C.
Not like the Mishra that already becomes the balabas. The guest invites guests because since he's already he feels at home. You feel at home. Okay, you don't do that. So he mutaris iman. So it's B can go both with A and C, and the A mutaris ima, C can go to B, A can go to B. But so here's this is pshita. The chiddush is that we are not afraid that maybe an article that originated in A, which will be brought to be beheaded, maybe inadvertently the Chevraman and B will take it to C. We're not afraid of that. Okay, says the Gemara. Guys, we're going back to the Reish. The Reish spoke about let's call him a sleeping traveler. That's exactly what happened. So Machlokes, Rabbi Yechon Menuri says that I don't need him to have da'as that he was koine shvisa. That you're out there, you're koine shvisa, you have 2,000 amas. Vayirava, Maikus of Rabbi Yechon Menuri. There's two ways of understanding the underlying svara of the Tanakh. Do we say option number one, Mizbar Kosovar Erhalt, that Chefse Hefker Koine Shvisa, that is something we're going to something similar. If an article has no ownership when Shabbos came in, so if the item belongs to me, it's bound to my tchum, and if it doesn't have any ownership, there are two ways of saying. One way would be to say Chefse Hefker only have daladamas. And even if someone acquires it over Shabbos, so what? It only can have daladamas. Or Chefse Hefker acquired their own residence, and they have 2,000 amas. Why one side or the other? Well, if you need kavana, a chayfetz has no das, has no kavana. So do we say, well, Rabbi Yechon already holds no kavana is needed. If no kavana is needed, then he would say the same thing by a chayfetz of hefker. And really, ubedino de litzik bekelim. And a chanabi, the machlokes should also apply to ownerless things. Why did they use as their machlokes a person? Is only The Afal Gav the Ikal Meimar, even if you were to say, which the Chachamim for sure say, that Chefzei Hefker only have Daladamas. But one would have argued that by a human being, since if he would have been awake, he's a bar das, right? Many times we say that. Royal Labila, Hoyal Vineyar Kana, if he would have been awake, he would have automatically acquired a whole residence and he would have been given 2,000 amas to each direction. So therefore, one might have thought that the Chachamim would have said that by a human being, by the sleeping traveler, Yashanami Kana. Don't forget, a person can be awoken in a berega. So that's why they spoke about Adam to tell us the chiddush of the Chachamim, Kamashul on the Loi, but they indeed argue in both cases, including Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. Ideal more maybe Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri himself, Ba'alma generally will hold that Chefzei Hefker ain't Koren Shvisa. There needs to be a certain amount of das or potential das. And indeed, why is it that by the sleeping traveler does Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri subscribe to the Shita that he does have 2,000 amas, that he does acquire a residence? So therefore we say that even though you were sleeping, Nami Kana. That's the question. In other words, the question is, do we extend their machlokes to Chefzei Hefker? Amar Rav Yosef Tashema says in the Brais. And now we're going to go into the rain sugya. Kshamim sheyardum erev yantif. In other words, it was already on the ground, the water, but it was still ownerless. It was still ownerless. Yesh lehem alpayim amal l'chol ruach. Clearly, guys, if we were to say that Chefzei Hefker only have daladamas, then this line would not fit. No, if you get water from a puddle, which was many times their water sources then, before we had the piping system, before we had plumbing, well, you have, from wherever you found it, there's 2,000 amas. But that's if it fell before Yom Tov. That means it was on the ground, Elamah was hefker. But if the rain fell on Yom Tov, in other words, the rain did not have any residence, it was up there. So then, Hareyan Keragli Kol Adam. So then what happens is it doesn't acquire its own residence, which at least is a lot better than Daladamas, then it's even better. Then, since it was not even here when Shabbos came in, whoever acquires it will apply to that water the same rules this person will apply to any else of his articles, which is my stuff are bound to my tchum, which is Gavaldik. Now, we're going to focus on the Reisha. That Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri also holds his din by Chefzei Hefker Koren Shvisa. So then I know who the author of the Reisha of this Brais is, Chama Rabbi Yechon. But Eli Amrat Chefzei Hefker, even according to Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, ain't Koren Shvisa. So then who's the author? It's not Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, not Rabbanan. So I have a raya from the rain Braisa that if rain fell on the ground, the Erev Yom Tov, that it has 2,000 amas, that Chefzei Hefker are Koren Shvisa, meaning they're not stuck in 4 amas, they have 2,000 amas. So holds Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. Says the Gemara that you should know that Abaye was sitting and he was chazaning the Torah of his teacher, right? Abaye was one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Yosef, the Kamala Shmaitza. So who overheard Rabbi Yosef's raya? Rav Safra. Rav Safra says, I don't accept it. Rav Safra Abaye, 1 second, maybe the Braisa is speaking about Big Shamim Hasmuchim Le'ir Askina, that it rained at a Yom Tov, but it rained near a city. And since it was on the ground, with the awareness of the city people, they knew they're going to make use of that water. That's why we're speaking about Yom Tov, because on Shabbos you can't carry. Here there's no carrying issues. Since they intended to acquire it, that's why the 4,000 amas really doesn't mean, the 2,000 amas doesn't mean from where the rain is. It means it acquires the tchum of the people in the city. Maybe that's the pshat on the Braisa. So Abaye tells Rav Safra, and that will refute Rabbi Yosef's raya regarding Shitas Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. So Abaye tells Rav Safra, Lo yisal kadaitach, because Abaye, I have another proof that my teacher is right, that Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri will subscribe to Chefzei Hefker or Koren Shvisa, because it says in the Mishnah Beitza, another din, Boishal Yachid, water, right, that's drawn from a private well, Keragli Yachid, it will have the boundaries of the individual that draws it. No, Kenagli Yochid, says Rashi, it has the boundaries of the owner of the, because it belonged to a private person. All of my chafetzim are automatically bound to my tchum. So if I draw it from your well, and let's say my permissible area to walk is not the same as yours, I have to be careful. I cannot take it into where I could, but you cannot. However, if it belongs to the public, then then it's bound by the tchum of the city. Likewise, another din, remember we learned about the pasei birois. These were wells that were basically property of the Yidden going up. Then kenagli hamemale, they are considered hefker. Well, the first case in the Braisa was, the first case in the Mishnah is, it belongs to the owner. The second case was, it belonged to the city. If it's in that oil bubble, so therefore it's chefse hefker, kenagli hamemale. Kenagli hamemale means that when you pick it up, it now will be down to your 2,000 amas. And Vitanya, and we learned in another Braisa, not on the Mishnah, Boyer Shel Shvatim, Rashi says, Boyer Shel Shvatim is this same well, Hefker, Yesh Mapaya L'chol Ruach. So now we got a contradiction. Kashan Adadi. Kashan Adadi, Elolav Shmamina, that the Braisa must follow Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. That's why it has to, it acquires its own Makaim Shvisa. I don't care who picked it up. And the Tanakama, the Rabbanan, the Mishnah will follow Shitas Chachamim that Chefse Hefker does not acquire its own 2,000 amas. So because of this, this will be the only way to solve the Stira Mishnah Braisa. Abaye tells Rav Safra, Zestech Saivi, that my teacher is right, that Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri does apply his concept of what he speaks about Adam also to Chefse Hefker.
Rabbi, didn't we learn the machlokes that according to the Chachamim, the Chefse Hefker would only have Dalet Amas?
Yes, I'm thinking about that.
Whereas here it seems like it's either it has its own,
yes,
or it goes according to the person that drew it.
Yes. Okay, I don't know right now what the answer. I'm sure everyone speaks about that, but it's fine. The proof we have clear. The proof is from the Braisa. The Braisa only will fit if Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri will hold Chefse Hefker will be kind of shvisa. Now that was that, and Absafra had no refutation on that. When Abaye came back to his teacher, Kiyase Lakame, that Rabbi Yosef, this is Abaye, Amalei Hachiyom and Absafra, right? He shared with his teacher. I taught Absafra your later. And then he had the challenge on the your proof. He felt that your proof from the rains out of Yontif is not a proof. And this is why I responded to him. That means that Rabbi really didn't back up his teacher. He only backed up the conclusion of Rabbi Yosef, but he didn't know how to back up the raya that Rabbi Yosef had. So Amalei, Rabbi Yosef says, no, you could have used my brisa of the rain out of Yontif. I am correct from that din of rains that fall out of Yontif. Because that if Yishamim Hasumucham Le'ir Askinan, and that's the only reason why in this case, since the Anshe Yo'ir had in mind to take that rain on Yontif, it's connected to the people of the city. So then the choice of expression of the Braisa is not good. What did the Braisa say? The Braisa said that Yesh Lehem Alpaim Amal L'chol Ruach. The emes is, again, we're not arguing with the din, we're arguing with the choice of words. If the reason why this rain is not stuck to Daladamas, Keshitas Chachamim, but this not what Chachamim normally say by Chefse Hefker, but L'kula Alma, it's going to have a much larger area in which you can take it because the people of the city intended to acquire it. So the Braisa should have said that this rain acquires the Tchum of Anshe Ho'ir. The Braisa doesn't use those words. That should not be what the Braisa says. The Braisa should have said, not that the Braisa says a wrong din. The Braisa expresses itself the wrong way. Is that I, from that choice of expression, know that Chefse Hefker acquired their own, they acquired their own 2,000 amas. And who holds of that, if not Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri? Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri speaks about Adam, But really, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Shita also is extended to Chefzei Hefker. Now that we spoke about rain, now we're going to have some amazing questions and answers regarding that. Says the Gemara, Omar Mar, we learned in the Brais that Yom Tif, if rain fell on Yom Tif, so then Harim Karagli Koladam. Harim Karagli Koladam, like we said. It was not on the ground before. So asks the Gemara, how can that be? If the rain fell on Yom Tif, then why do we not assume that it originated? Where was it when Shabbos came in? It was still in the ocean. Where does rain come from? According to Rabbi Eliezer, Ve'ed Yalam in Haaretz. So if it was in the ocean, why don't we say that it already left its tchum? The rain left its tchum. If the rain left its tchum, and we're going with Rabbi Yosef, we're following Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The Chefzei Hefker acquires its own 2,000 amas. Now it's beyond its 2,000 amas. And what happens if something leaves its original tchum? Even b'shoigeg, if it did not come back, what did we learn in the beginning of this Perek? This is a great question. Or if you are so near the ocean, so maybe it didn't leave the tchum, but you have to use the sea as its ground zero from where you measured the 2,000 amas. The only answer will be is that this Braisa doesn't follow Rabbi Eliezer. The Ikir Rabbi Eliezer Tainas Haftesim base. Unlike Shitas Rabbi Yeshua that says Kol Olam Kuloi Mimayim Elyonim. Wow, Hushoisa. Limitar Hashamayim Tishtamayim. We're going to learn this in Tainas, which is quite amazing. Okay, so will it only work not like Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Yitzchak? No, you're right. If we know that the water was still down here, then according to the Shita, again, we're following the Shita that Chefzei Hefker are kind of their own Makom Shvisa, then you're right. But what happened here is that the rain fell on Yom Tif, but Erev Yom Tif, the sky was filled with dark clouds. So the rain was up there in the clouds. Now the Gemara has a few questions on that. You're right away going to go back to Tchum L'mayla Masara. Remember when we began the sugi of Tchum L'mayla Masara, we mentioned something very important. That if Ein Tchum L'mayla Masara, if someone when Shabbos came in had no Tchum, he's not shaykh to Tchumen, then from when they enter into Asara Tvachim and under, now they get a new Tchum of 2,000 amas. That would work. So first of all, the Gemara says, how do you know that the rain that fell on Yom Tov came from the dark clouds that you saw before? Maybe those clouds moved away and new clouds came. Number one, these are new clouds. So for that, the Gemara answers 4 lines from the bottom now. It must be the case is only when you had a simon. You knew it's the same cloud, which is a doichik v'yisema. Taka, you have a doubt. But since have a suffix to Devreim and the suffix to Devreim, look, it has to be that there were dark clouds. In other words, we're coming now and saying, according to where we're up to, that if the heavens were open and on Yom Tov day it rained, since according to Rabbi Eliezer these waters came from the closest body of water, then and according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, then you can drink it where it is. You can't carry that water. It might be outside the tchum. First white line, but still asks the Gemara, how do you resolve that the water was in the clouds and it wasn't on the ocean? Let us start counting the 2,000 amas from the clouds. And Tifshamin also, should this not resolve the inquiry that we left unresolved, then it would work. Because the yesh chulam, then likna shvisa ba'avin. And if the rain is already 2,000 amas down from the clouds, then rain that falls on Shabbos, the rain itself, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, right? Should even according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Danny good. And say according to the Chacham.
But didn't we learn before with the whole sugi about Elyahu Navi that the whole issue was him coming down and that he would acquire right there? We never said like, oh, he really has it up in Shemayim.
We said that if he comes down, then he only has Daladamas. So the Sheikh Shmaitza, the way we were, the possibility is that he was able to teach over here. He went up. If ain't you can travel as much as you want, but when you come down, you're stuck in Daladamas, which was fine. He went down, I think it was the Hanardon, he gave a share, and then he flew back up, Yosef Shida. Okay, so the Gemara says, no. I will tell you that yesh tchumen. The whole question of the rain is not good. The whole question of rain is not good. We're still up to the place that the Braisa is only when there were clouds. But since umayim be'eva mivla beli, halachically we consider the water absorbed in the clouds. They're not be'en, so they only came into the world when they descended. Oh, they only came into the world. Now, still, it's not so simple because they became be'en once they are under the clouds. But before we ask that, Daf Mem Vav, let's go with that. Asking them, how are you resolving my question? Now you made it much worse. If halachically the rain is not in existence because it is absorbed in the clouds, so it only comes into being when it becomes visible, then you got muksa, then you should not even be allowed to drink rain in the place where it came. Called Shchinda Havelu Noiland, the Asirim. Although more than that, if water left its tchum, so there's two issues. You can't carry it and you can't even eat it. That's also we had in the beginning of the page. Ella, the top line, Ella Maya Ba'avin may not naidi. The answer for all this is that the rain is be'en. It's not noilat. But the moisture in the clouds are not stationary. Now we're going to learn a klal. The klal is that if something is in movement when Shabbos comes in, even if you say chefsei hefker koine shvisa, it cannot acquire any tchum. It's moving. So now that we came to this answer, now we don't have to say that the Braisa is only speaking about a heaven that has dark clouds and you have a sim and you don't need any of that. Even if the waters that fell on Yom Tov, indeed, when Yom Tov came in, was still in the sea, was still in the ocean, was still in the lake, was still in the body of water. The waters, well, not in the lake, in the ocean, the water in many bodies of water are halachically considered moving. Mayim ba'okiyanus nami may not naidi, and therefore they don't acquire their own residence. And since they did not acquire their own residence, and now they came in to the world on Yom Tov, they came now down. Now they get their own 2,000 amas, which is exactly what it says in the Braisa. Let me just find the words over here. Of the rain, that the Yom Tov harim keragle kol adam. Just to know, ragle kol adam, then that has to be worked out is that whoever gets the rain, it had no tchum. So whoever got the rain, now that is bound to the person's tchum. And now we're going to bring a raya. We'll just conclude over here. V'tanya as a raya, l'hara is hamoishchem. See, it has to be a body of water that's moving. So flowing streams. Or mayonis hanoivim, gushing springs, streams, springs, they're moving. Forget about the rain. If you take water out of it, it never had a tchum. Why did it not have a tchum? Because something that's made not 90 doesn't acquire its own tchum. To be continued. Okay, we got to resolve the Rabbanan issue. Well, I'll look into that. Got to slichas.
I looked at it quickly on the bottom, but I think it was just saying that this is the raya of Yechon ben Nuri. I don't think it was really focusing to match up Rabbanan. Is that our Rabbanan?